Next concept, very, very important, is the concept of inflation targeting. I'm using the term inflation targeting. In some of the books, they'll straightforward use the term flexible inflation targeting. Now, what is the meaning of this? You will understand in couple of minutes. But before this, have a look at this particular concept here. In case of India, there are two important policies. Okay, the most important policy is one, fiscal policy, and the second one is the monetary policy. What is the basic idea of fiscal policy? Fiscal policy is determined by the government of India. Under fiscal policy, government will use a taxation policy. Government will use a disinvestment policy, right? So on and so forth, in order to generate revenues. And these particular fiscal policy measures are generally associated with the financial decisions of the government. On the other hand, there is a concept called as a monetary policy. Monetary policy is the power of RBI. Is it okay? RBI determines monetary policy. Although I'm using the term RBI here, please understand technically the monetary policy is determined by one group or one committee known as Monetary Policy Committee. Monetary Policy Committee, that is MPC. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Although I'll keep on using the term RBI determines the monetary policy, but technically speaking, Monetary Policy Committee will determine the monetary policy. Now, some of you will get confused. Sir, you're saying RBI, but you're using another term, Monetary Policy Committee. What is the basic difference here? The basic difference is, in case of monetary policy, the total number of members here are 6. Is it okay? The composition of Monetary Policy Committee is 6. And we have established Monetary Policy Committee, and we have also introduced the concept of flexible inflation targeting by amending RBI Act. Before independence, the then government basically passed an act famously known as RBI Act of 1934. And with the passage of RBI Act of 1934, RBI was established on 1st April 1935. But more importantly, this idea of a monetary policy committee as well as inflation targeting have been incorporated under the concept of a RBI Act of 1934. Now have a look at this. With the passage of this particular law, or with the amendment of this particular law, what we have done is we have established a new committee where the composition will consist of 6 members. Out of these particular 6 members, 3 will be from RBI, including the most important functionary, RBI governor, and the remaining 3 will be the experts who are appointed by the government. This is the basic composition of the Monetary Policy Committee now. And this particular Monetary Policy Committee is following a concept called as a bi-monthly monetary policy. What is a bi-monthly monetary policy? Once every 2 months. Remember this. Once every 2 months, this committee will meet, will deliberate, and will announce the monetary policy. Is it okay? Do not get confused. Bi-monthly means once in 2 months. Don't read it vice versa. It is not twice in 1 month. It is once in every 2 months. This was the recommendation given by one of the committees, the famously known as Urjit Patel Committee. And based on the recommendation of Urjit Patel Committee, now we are following a bi-monthly monetary policy. Now have a look at this. Rather than using the term Monetary Policy Committee, sometimes I'll simply say that RBI decides the monetary policy. Don't get confused, because RBI is present here and the most important function is RBI governor here. I'll keep on using the term RBI decides the monetary policy. But essentially, follow this very carefully. Essentially, under monetary policy, what we do is either we will increase the money supply in the economy or we will decrease the money supply in the economy. Is it okay? We will increase the quantity of money supply or we decrease the quantity of money supply. That is exactly what we do in the monetary policy. How we do that? What kind of tools are used? Please don't worry as of now. I'll discuss that under the concept of RBI. Now follow this very carefully. Whenever RBI increases the money supply, there is a concern of inflation in the market. Is it okay? Whenever RBI increases the money supply, there is always a concern of higher money supply means a higher inflationary trend. But why does RBI increase the money supply? The logic is whenever RBI increases the money supply, the banks will take loans from RBI and it will lend to borrowers in the market. Is the logic okay here? RBI increase the money supply by lowering the rate of interest. What do you mean by this? Imagine I'm RBI. I wish so, but anyways, I'm not the RBI governor. I'm the RBI governor. You are a bank. You will also feel happy now. You are the bank. I'm the RBI governor. I want to increase the money supply in the market. So what I will do? I will reduce the interest rate. I will give you loans. You will take loans at a lower rate of interest. You will also give loan at a lower rate of interest. So more and more loans will be issued in the market. And generally when this rate of interest in the market will come down, when the interest rates in the market will come down, investments will happen more like this. For example, if I'm a person who wants to save and put in a bank account, and if the interest rates are very lower, I will feel like rather than investing, rather than putting it in money, I will spend more in the market. So the argument is, whenever the interest rates are reduced by RBI like this, people will spend more. Right? The banks will give more loans in the market. Essentially, total investment in the market will increase. When the investment in the market will increase, we can expect this to add to GDP growth rate. Because when the investment increases, the production increases, the employment generation increases, the supply of goods and services increases. Because the employment has increased, demand for goods and services also will increase. So production is increasing, demand is increasing, overall GDP growth rate will start happening in the market, or the GDP growth rate will start rising upwards in this particular market. So objective of the RBI is, if I want to promote growth, I should increase the money supply. But when RBI increase the money supply, there is also concern of inflationary trend in the market. Because if everybody is spending in the market, demand for the goods and services shoots up, there is always a concern that this higher demand will lead to higher price levels in the market. So have a look at this. On one side, if they want to promote growth, they will have to increase the money supply. There's a concern of inflation. But on the other hand, if RBI wants to control inflation, they will have to reduce the money supply. So let's play the game again. I'm the RBI governor, you are the bank. I feel that there's too much of money supply in the market. How do I reduce the money supply? I will increase the interest rates. I will basically increase the interest rates. When I make it more costly for you to take loan from me, obviously you will transfer that in the higher interest rates when you're giving loans to someone else. So interest rates in the market will rise up. People who have money now feel that rather than spending, I should save because the interest rates are higher. So they will start reserving the investment or lowering the consumption and start saving more. So liquidity or money supply in the market will come down. And when money supply will come down, inflation will be controlled. But have a look at the other side of the argument. When the money supply comes down, what will happen to investments? Investments will also take a hit. When investments will come down, what do you think will happen to GDP growth rate? The GDP growth rate will start getting affected. By increasing the investment, I could have achieved a GDP growth rate of let's say 7%, 8%. But because I'm reducing the investments in the market, because I'm reducing the liquidity in the market or money supply in the market, the GDP potential will also start coming down like this. So this is the dilemma for RBI. Through monetary policy, RBI can infuse more money into the system, increase the money supply in the system so that they will promote growth, but there is always a concern of inflation. And if they reduce the money supply in the market, yes, they will be able to control inflation. But there is a concern whether growth will be promoted or growth prospects will come down. So this is the dilemma that I'm actually referring to. Now to overcome this particular issue, what Government of India has done is, it has signed an agreement with RBI. This particular agreement is famously known as Monetary Policy Framework Agreement. Is it okay? Monetary Policy Framework Agreement, MPFA. Remember this. Very, very famous. Under this particular agreement, what has happened? Government of India has entered into an agreement with RBI. They have signed an agreement with RBI. This was signed in 2014 and 15, came into force from 2016. Is it okay? Was implemented in 2016. What are the important points with respect to this particular agreement? What are the important points? First, very important point. Now, RBI has been given the duty of controlling inflation. RBI will control inflation now. That is what Government of India says under this agreement. RBI will be having the duty of controlling inflation. Question is, if they are controlling inflation, at what rate they are supposed to control it? Under what rate they are supposed to bring the inflation? Government of India says they are supposed to maintain the inflation rate at 4%. Remember this. They are supposed to maintain the inflation rate at 4%. And who's deciding this? Government of India. In consultation with RBI, they have decided, okay, you should maintain it at 4%. But please understand this. This particular 4%, can you maintain the inflation rate exactly at 4% all the time? Is it okay? Can you exactly maintain the inflation rate at 4% all the time? Not possible. Because suddenly in the market, some situation might happen, some events might take place, as a result of which the prices of commodities will become volatile. Prices will fluctuate. And when the prices of commodities will fluctuate, inflation rate will also change. So what Government of India has done is, it has given the duty of controlling the inflation to RBI at 4%, but certain flexibility has been provided. Government of India says you will have to maintain inflation at a 4% plus or minus 200 basis points. Now, what is the idea for 200 basis points? Simply remember this. 100 basis points is equal to 1%. Is it okay? 100 basis points is equal to 1%. So 200 basis points will be equal to 2%. So RBI can allow the inflation rate to reach from 4% to 4 plus 2, 6%. And it can allow the inflation to fall up to 4% minus 2. That would be 2%. Is it okay? So Government of India has told RBI how much? 4%, but flexibility has been provided. That is 4% plus 2%. 4% minus 2%. It can allow the inflation rate to reach up to 6% and fall up to 2%. Inflation rate has to be at 4%, but certain flexibility has been provided. And another point here, whenever I'm talking about flexible inflation targeting, the inflation that we are focused on is headline CPI inflation. Headline CPI inflation. Now, I've covered what is CPI. I've not yet covered what is headline. Give me a couple of minutes, I will cover even that. So what is the inflation that I'm referring to here? I'm referring to headline CPI inflation. Now, let's go to the next point. This particular target has been set up by Government of India for a period of 5 years. After 5 years, Government of India can review and change the inflation target, which already Government of India has done in 2021. And even after the review, government says, I'll keep the same flexible inflation target for RBI. That is, we'll still continue with 4% plus or minus 2%. And since we are giving a flexibility here, this is generally referred as a flexible inflation targeting. Next important point. What if inflation crosses more than 6% and falls below 2%? Is it okay? The limits are what? 6 and 2%. What if inflation crosses more than 6 and falls below 2%? Then the document basically says, if the inflation crosses more than 6% or falls below 2% in 3 consecutive quarters, then RBI has to give a written explanation to government. And in the written explanation, RBI has to explain what were the causes, why the inflation is behaving like this. Right? What are the causes? Within what time period RBI will bring the inflation under control? And the next one, what measures will be taken by RBI to bring the inflation under control? Is it okay? 3 points. Remember this. First one, what are the reasons? What are the causes of this particular spike or a decline in the inflation rate? Second, what measures will be taken by RBI to bring inflation under control? And the third one is, within what time period the inflation will be brought under control? That is another very, very important point with respect to FIT, flexible inflation targeting. Next one, have a look at this. Once every 6 months, RBI has to come out with a report. once every 6 months, RBI has to come out with a report and explain what are the causes of inflation for this particular inflation for the 6 months, and what could be the causes in the next 6 months, right, of inflation. So it has to come out with a report and explain, give certain points. What were the causes for inflation in the last 6 months? What could be the causes of inflation in the next 6 months? This information has to be provided with respect to future movement and the past movement of price levels by RBI. These are the very, very important points with respect to flexible inflation targeting. So remember one more point here. The first time it was introduced was from 2016. So 2021, 5-year time period is over. Government of India has again reviewed it, continued with the same flexible inflation targeting for RBI till 2026 now. These are certain very important points with respect to FIT. Now, with respect to this idea of a flexible inflation targeting, I told you this. Whatever I'm talking about inflation, whatever inflation I'm referring to is the headline CPI inflation. Now, the question is, what is the meaning of headline inflation? What is the meaning of headline inflation? Let me give one basic concept first, then we'll discuss what is there in the slide. Let's take one very simple example. Imagine, rather than considering 448, 460 or 697 articles and a CPI as well as a WPI respectively, let's take a very simple example. Imagine I'm considering only 3 articles. Is it okay? Let's say I'm considering only 3 articles. Article A, B and C. Now follow this very carefully. Let's say prices of article A and B have not changed by much. Is it okay? Prices of articles A and B have not changed by much. Let's take an arbitrary number here. For commodity A, price was 20 rupees. It has increased to 21 rupees. For commodity B, price was let's say 85 rupees. It has increased to 87 rupees. So if you consider these two items or commodities, the price levels have not increased by much. Yes, there is a marginal rise, small increase in the price level has happened. But what if the commodity C, the prices have abruptly increased from let's say 100 rupees to 130 rupees. Is it okay? There is another commodity C, the price of commodity C has increased abruptly by a huge margin from 100 to 130. Now, if I calculate inflation considering all the 3 commodities, obviously there will be certain inflation rate. Is it okay? Obviously there will be certain inflation rate because the price levels overall has increased. But can I simply say that majority of this particular spike in the inflation rate, majority of this rise in the inflation rate is because of commodity C? Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Majority of this particular price rise or the inflation rate has taken place because the price of commodity C has increased by a huge margin. Whereas for other commodities, there is just a marginal rise in the price levels. So generally what happens is when you calculate a WPI, that is in the calculation of WPI, how many commodities you take? 697. And if you're calculating, let's say CPI urban or CPI rural, you are taking somewhere around 440 plus commodities. There are 448 in one and 460 in another. Don't worry about this. But the idea is when you consider all the commodities and you calculate inflation, is it okay? When you consider the prices of all the commodities, whatever commodities are there in the list, if you consider all the prices or the prices of all the commodities, that is called as headline inflation. I'll repeat it so that it is clear to you. This is important. Whenever you consider all the commodities and the price changes of all the commodities and you calculate inflation, it is called as headline inflation. Another name of a headline inflation, they'll simply say that headline inflation is the overall measure of inflation rate in the economy. It is the measure of overall rate of inflation in the economy. I'm not exempting any commodity. Whatever is the number of commodity, I'll consider all of them and I will calculate inflation rate. But the concern here is, what if prices of vegetable commodities has increased very sharply or the rise is very, very quick? What if prices of fuels, petrol and diesel, have increased abruptly by a large margin? Is it okay if I say that if prices of vegetables as well as fuel commodities have increased by a large margin, that will basically influence overall inflation rate? Is the logic okay? If the prices of food commodities and the fuel commodities, if they have increased very sharply, have increased by a very large margin, overall inflation rate will increase. But that is a misrepresentation, because it might so have happened remaining commodities prices have increased by a very small margin, negligible margin. But only for food and fuel, because the prices have increased abruptly like this, it will basically be representing or it will be influencing overall inflation rate. That is the precise reason what we do is, apart from headline inflation, we also calculate another type of inflation which is referred as core inflation. Is it okay? Which is referred to as core inflation. What is a core inflation here? Follow this very carefully. Whenever you are taking headline inflation, you are calculating headline inflation. What are you doing? All the commodities, all the 697 commodities, let's say WPI, all the 697 commodities you are considering. But when you shift from the headline to core, imagine out of 697 commodities, there are 10 commodities whose prices are fluctuating very quickly in the market, whose prices are quickly increasing, quickly falling. Is it okay? Or else they will use a technical term. Short-term fluctuations are associated with the prices of these commodities. Short-term, within short-term, prices will increase. Within short-term, within couple of days itself or couple of weeks, prices will fall. So generally what we do is, we will identify those commodities which are experiencing short-term fluctuations like this, and we will exclude those particular commodities. Let's say out of 697 commodities, there are 10 commodities which are like this. So when I calculate a headline inflation, I will take all 697. But when I calculate a core out of 697, I will exempt, I will take out 10 articles and I will calculate the price levels of only remaining 687 commodities. Is it okay? This kind of an inflation is referred as core inflation. So the idea of a headline inflation and core inflation is applicable to both WPI as well as CPI. But what is the basic idea here? Because of a short-term fluctuations which are experienced or short-term fluctuations in the price of some of the commodities, overall inflation could be high. And when the overall inflation is very high, don't you think that will definitely have an impact on the monetary policy of RBI? That has been the concern here. The concern is, imagine, right, suddenly in certain month, prices of vegetables or food articles will rise up. Prices of fuels will rise up. As a result of a sharp increase in the vegetable or the food articles as well as fuel articles, headline inflation will cross, let's say, 6%. The overall headline inflation will cross 6%. So when the headline inflation crosses 6%, what do you think RBI should do? It has to drag it back. It has to take certain policy measures to bring down the inflation. And what is generally done by RBI to bring down inflation? Reduce money supply in the market. Increase the interest rates. But what if immediately after 1.5 months or 2 months, the prices of these commodities will suddenly fall down? Again, RBI will have to take reverse measures to increase the money supply. So the argument here is very simple. These commodities, when I talk about headline and core, there are certain commodities. The prices of these commodities will keep on shifting very abruptly within very short time period. The prices are very volatile. So the change of price of these particular commodities or the price movements of these particular commodities should not be influencing my decision making in terms of, let's say, monetary policy. That is the reason in the recent times, there has been a discussion whether we must focus our policy on headline inflation or core inflation. Government of India even today says, I'm going to go with headline CPI inflation. Is it okay? Now, what are the arguments here? In favor of headline, I'll focus on two sides here, in favor of headline, in favor of core. What are the arguments in favor of headline? One, these particular food and fuel prices, yes, we know, these are fluctuating very quickly in the market. Right? These are short-lived. Short-lived means for a very short time period, these are high. For very short time period, these are very low. Yes, we know that. But even after that, we will decide our policy on this particular headline only. Why? Whenever these particular food prices and fuel prices will be hiked, will start increasing in the retail market, it will directly have an impact on the common man. Is it okay? For example, if you're spending 100 rupees to purchase fuel, petrol in the market, if the price of the fuel per liter has increased, can I simply say that you'll be able to purchase a lesser amount of a fuel now? In terms of volume, you'll be able to purchase lesser. For a simple reason, price levels have increased. So the argument here is, even though, right, these are short-lived because these are affecting the common man directly, I will go ahead with headline inflation. Second one, yes, we know that, right, headline inflation will keep on changing because of the fuel prices and food prices. But please understand, we have already used headline inflation for inflation targeting earlier also. That is, when we introduced or when we implemented FIT from 2016, we had taken headline inflation, that is headline CPI itself. And this has worked wonderfully in case of India. For majority period of that time, the inflation rate has been somewhere in the range of 4%. So it is a success then. Although we are considering headline, this has been successful. So we'll continue with the same idea. Third one. This is the second one. Let's go to the third one. Understand this. The current situation. What is the current situation? There is a pandemic. There is a slowdown in the economy. Economy is recovering like this. In this particular period of time, we must not be changing this kind of a policy. The monetary policy is a very, very important policy tool that is there with RBI. Inflation targeting is a very, very important policy tool that has been in the process of being implemented. So these kinds of policy measures should not be changed during the times of a slowdown, during the times of recession. Okay. Next one. Have a look at this. Understand the logic here. Inflation, like we have discussed earlier, can happen because of a supply side as well as because of a demand side. Is it okay? We have discussed the concept of a demand pull inflation, cost push inflation. So inflation can happen because of the supply side measures or supply side factors or demand side factors. Have a look at the statement here. It is true that the supply side constraints play an important role in influencing the inflation rate. But this has remained same in case of Indian economy. Means what? Whenever you're talking about food and fuel, what do you think should be put, or where do you think these two commodities should be put? Are these supply side factors or are these demand side factors? These are, remember this, supply side factors. Cost of food increases, supply side factor. Cost of fuel increases, supply side factor. So it is true that the retail headline inflation is affected by supply side factors. We agree. But this has remained the same earlier also. Even in the past, this was true in case of India. So what has actually changed? Nothing has changed. So we'll continue with headline CPI. But against these arguments, there are also certain arguments which say that rather than headline CPI, we must be using or we must shift to core CPI. What are the arguments? One, have a look at this. The monetary tools that we have are going to affect the demand side factors. Is it okay? Demand side factors in the sense, when RBI reduces interest rates, increases interest rates, that will basically have an impact on how much money is being supplied, how many loans are available, how much investment that is going to take place. All these are demand side factors. So argument is, in case of headline inflation, it is affected by supply side factors. And because of this, you are taking a decision on the demand side factors. Don't you think the policy or there is something wrong with the policy? And moreover, the argument here is, have a look at this. Whenever there are sudden fluctuations, short-lived movements, in case of prices such as for fuel as well as food like this, that will basically drag up the inflation rate, headline inflation, or drag down the headline inflation. And because the inflation rate is shifting either ways, RBI also has to change the interest rates in the market. But the argument here is this particular shift in the inflation rate is very, very for a shorter duration. These shifts in the inflation rate are short-lived because food prices and fuel prices automatically will keep on fluctuating. So based on the factors which are fluctuating, which are short-lived, we are making our policy. This is not the right approach. Rather than using headline inflation, we must be using core inflation here. This is the argument with respect to headline versus core. Again, I am basically telling you this, repeating this. Government of India even today has been using headline CPI as the inflation indicator. I am using the term inflation indicator. Some of the books will use nominal anchor. Do not get confused. Nominal anchor, which is used for decision making or monetary policy making, is a headline CPI. What do you mean by nominal anchor? What inflation rate is used for making decisions, right? That is a headline CPI. Done.